evening. Tonight is Wednesday, April 1st, and we are having the Finance Committee. We have many people participating remotely. So tonight we have present Kevin Kennedy, Ann Kavanaugh, Ed Kazanovich, and Sharon Kwiatkowski. Participating remotely, we have Mallory, Ed, Trevor, and Mike. We have several departments to talk to this evening. First on our agenda is the IT department, and Mike Marino is present. So Mike, we're looking at your budget, and I see that you're here, Mike. Hi.
Yep, hi.
Okay, and do you have anything you want to highlight about your budget?
I sent some documents over. They were supposed to be sent to you. I'm not sure if you received those.
That was emailed to you before the last.
Yeah, I think we're all set. I have a breakdown of what your, you have a revised hardware, software budget list. And under CIP, let's take a look at that. Well, let me ask to the committee then, do you have any questions? Mallory, do you have any questions for Mike?
I do not.
Okay, how about Ed Coleman?
Nope, I'm good.
Trevor?
No, not this time.
Okay, Mike Marshall?
So my only question is the department request for hardware software maintenance and then the actual hardware software maintenance individual page don't seem to match up exactly. And so I want to just make sure that we have the right numbers. Let's see. On the main request, we have a total line item of 151, 131. But if you look at the individual amounts that are subtotaled, it's 142, 791, 1396, and then $1,000 for miscellaneous and 8,735 for munis upgrades, which just if my back of the napkin math is right, is slightly more than the 151, 131. So I want to make sure we're just voting on the right number.
Yeah, well, if I may, Mike, my recollection is that we were going to suspend ClearGov effective July 1. We were going to continue that till the end of the year. I think given the budget priorities, it's a nice tool to have, but we thought that we would suspend it for a period of time and revisit that in the fall.
It's in a zero.
Actually an item in there that's a credit. The Munis requisition module, 1396.
Yep.
That's a credit coming from the school department. So that might have been throwing off the number if you were adding it in instead of subtracting it. This is why I'm a lawyer, not an accountant.
Oh, okay, so this is a credit. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So that should, okay. That should make sense. Okay, does that take care of your question, Mike?
I'm just very quickly doing that. Yes, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Thank you very much, Mike. You're welcome.
All right, so, yes, Mr. Kennedy, question?
I'm sorry, I think, Mike, this is my usual question to you every year is, I don't know how you get by on the IT responsibilities for the town on on the minimum budget that you're allotted. Based on the events of this last month, do you foresee any dramatic changes in how government may work going forward and how that's going to affect either this budget going forward or future budgets for your department?
That's a good question. And right now, things are very uncertain. My budget that I presented here is mostly just maintenance of things that we already have.
There are a couple, I think there was one new item that we added in there, and then we have an upgrade for an existing system. So that just handles everything that we have already. Moving forward, obviously everything's uncertain. We don't know how things are going to play out at the moment. There might need to be some adjustments to keep with remote meetings, remote access, things like that. Right now we have purchased the GoToMeeting platform, and we're good until September for that. But if things extend longer than that, that's something we'll have to revisit with next year's budget.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, great, thanks, Kevin. So we're gonna vote on this. I'm gonna read the department request line, which is the same as the town manager recommends, $229,873. This is for the info technology department. That's an 8.93% increase to fiscal 2020. To do the vote, I need to do a roll call. So I say yes. Well, first we have, do I hear a motion to recommend it?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Thanks, Kevin. Do we hear a second? Okay, thank you. I think that was Ed seconded it. All right, so let's see. I say yes. Kim is not able to join us yet. Ed Coleman, yes or no?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin Kennedy?
Yes.
Mike Marshall?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you. So the department is, the budget request is recommended.
Ian Kavanaugh?
Yes, I said yes, right up front, yes. I'm top of the list. All right. And I don't know if anyone had any questions for Mr. Marino while we're here on his capital budget. There are two items, $45,000 to upgrade town security cameras and $20,000 for computer replacement. I don't have any questions. Does anyone have any? You can chime in now.
This is Mike Marshall. I had one question.
Sure, Mike, go ahead.
The computer replacements, have we given any thought to, like, I don't know if we have desktops or laptops, but buying laptops in anticipation of people potentially needing to work remotely?
Yes, obviously this budget was put in place before that, and this item is replacing existing desktops that we have. One of the items we had discussed with some emergency funds with everything is purchasing more laptops. And we do have a quote for that we're working on. I believe I have one quote at the moment. I was waiting for another quote to come in. Laptops right now are actually very difficult to purchase because everybody's buying them up.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's something we're going to have to keep in mind going forward as everything evolves and we see what the IT needs of the town turn out to be. Thank you. All right, Mike, thank you very much. I think we're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next, we have the Auburn Public School budget. The total...
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, could I just, before we get into the school department budget, could I?
Yes, hold on, Ms. Brunel. Yes, sir, Kevin?
Just sort of a higher level thing. This is probably the first budget cycle that I've been through in the 3 years I think I've been on Finance Committee that we've had any sort of fiscal instability and that we've been able to look at things and, you know, Mr. Kazanovich does an outstanding job really reviewing minor tweaks. Mr. Kazanovich, can you just give us an idea? I mean, I think as everybody's uncertainty as to their own employment, health insurance, I mean, you name it, people's concerns right now, you know, even though we're under the 2.5%, you know, at 2.12 according to the original one, do we need to revisit things? Will we have an opportunity to revisit things? Will you continue to revisit things in order to possibly make cuts as we go on to keep that number even lower than we're at right now?
To answer your question, yes, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Casanova.
Great, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. I was going to offer an explanation at some point. I'm glad it's on the front end rather than in the middle on the tail end. Just to kind of set the stage. Certainly, this is very disturbing. I know we're all facing some turbulent times, but the economic atomic bomb went off a couple of weeks ago, and we don't know what the fallout is going to be. Certainly, there is a concern about what it means for the current fiscal year as well as FY21. We don't know what that's going to be yet, and certainly we know we have to revisit the budget at some point in time and make some adjustments. What I can tell you is we're already starting to feel the impact of lost revenue on the local receipt side. We know our hotels are closed down. We know people aren't going out to eat. Our meals tax is going to take a hit. Those two revenue sources alone generate about $1.2 million every year. You subtract out 2 months, maybe a quarter of that, we're going to take a $300,000, $400,000 hit right there for the current year that we're in, not to mention what it's going to do for next year. We know our property tax collection is going to suffer. People are unemployed. People may not have the ability to pay their real estate tax bills, their sewer bills, their motor vehicle excise. There's an expectation that that revenue is going to fall off. What we don't know is what we're going to receive in terms of state aid, federal aid, in terms of the relief bill that may offer us some. It may fill in that hole. We just don't know yet. I believe administration, Governor Baker and his administration team are supposed to meet in the next couple of weeks. Certainly, they're going to try to determine what the state impact is going to be, as well as what our local aid figures are going to be. But that can't stop us from moving forward. We just don't know what that impact is. So right now, effective last week, we put an immediate freeze on all spending to try to curb whatever lost revenue, offset it, any lost revenue we may recognize. But going into next year, we definitely have to revisit the budgets. And we're going to have to do it sooner than later. So I believe it can't wait till fall. We'll probably have to have a special town meeting in the summer at some point. I believe that our annual town meeting most likely will be postponed or delayed for a period of time, given the fact that the governor's recent order to minimize gatherings or whatever is through May 4th. Our town meeting is May 5th, so that may even get extended. That's a decision we're going to have to make in the next couple of weeks. So there's definitely going to be an adjustment to the budget. To what extent, we don't know. But certainly we will keep an eye on things and keep you up to speed as soon as information comes through the door.
Okay, just as tonight's goes along, obviously we have some big budgets before us. Dr. Brunel's and the school committees, and they obviously, school committee reviews the budgets in depth, but as far as us making recommendations tonight for budgets that were established prior to this crisis, how should we view the budgets? Review them as if they were
I think our budgets are recommended based upon a revenue source that no longer exists. We know that we're going to have to make adjustments. Everyone is aware that those adjustments are coming down the line. What that means for each department, we're going to have to set some priorities on what's important, given the latest circumstances. I think Dr. Brunel and every other department head can tell you they don't know what the expectation is going to be, but they have been put on notice that these budgets will need to be revisited.
And so logistically, will the finance committee be brought back again almost to look at all these budgets again prior to town meeting?
Well, certainly we don't know if there's going to be a level of federal aid that may allow us to continue on the track that we're on now, or whether or not we're going to have to go back and do a total review of each departmental budget. We just don't know yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed and Kevin. I have a question for Ed. Ed, have you heard anything from the state regarding fiscal 2020 cherry sheet monies that are, we haven't received everything from the state, have we yet?
So we do get a monthly distribution of cherry sheet state aid from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They do have a weekly meeting that town managers and assistant town managers are cued in on a weekly basis to listen to whatever news is coming out of Beacon Hill, as well as ask questions of the administration. It's a 1-hour conference. What I heard on the last conference is right now local aid will be distributed as approved. I have every reason to believe that will continue to the end of the year. Some questions were asked relative to Cherry Sheet State Aid, whether there was any discussion about 9C cuts, and we have been told and we have heard there's no consideration for that at this point in time. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to receive a blow to the FY 2020 budget, because we know our local revenue is going to come in short of what the expectation is.
Right. All right, thank you, Ed. Dr. Brunel, thank you very much for holding on. I'm just going to read the budget total number, and then maybe you can just give us some of the highlights. The request by the school department is to have a fiscal 2021 budget of $27,676,055, which is a 2.75% increase to fiscal 2020. The town manager recommendation is a little less than that, $27,675,000. So thank you for waiting, Dr. Brunel. Would you like to give us some highlights of the budget?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the Finance Committee for giving me this opportunity. So, as announced, the budgeted increase is 2.75%, which was my understanding was the recommended amount by the town manager and CFO. In this budget, it truly represents a level services budget. There are no increases or any requests for new staff. There is a shift that will take place based on class sizes and trying to keep it equitable, particularly at the elementary level. We'll be transferring a teacher from Swanson Road to the Bryn Mawr School to replace or a retiree. So this budget, actually, the first draft through, or the first one approved, I would say, by school committee. There were other drafts prior to that, was a 3.34% increase. Most recently, we reduced it to the 2.96, and then just last evening, the school committee unanimously supported the new budget number, the 2.75% increase, and that reduction was made available to us because two teachers who we had budgeted for have both put in for leaves of absence next year that have been approved. So we have been reduced the amount because we'll hire a long-term sub for each position. So the savings in salary really brought us to the 2.75%. So based on the conversation and comments that Mr. Kazanovich made, and I know that I've always got a quote to share, but this one I thought was really particularly poignant at this juncture, right? So as Eddie said, very unsettled, uncertain times. But at the beginning of the PowerPoint that I know you have, and I'm not going to go through, it says, when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where the power is. So I can tell you, not only through this most recent crisis, Auburn is as best positioned as it can be due to the teamwork. There's rarely a day that goes by that the school department is not working with town's administration and all of the other various departments. So I think this budget is one that speaks to the concerns that are out there, but will continue to provide a quality education for our students because, as I've said over the years, each only gets one opportunity at each grade level in each milestone in their development. Because at the end of the day, just as the end of the PowerPoint showed, it's all about our students and making sure that, they have a well-rounded, diverse education that includes extracurricular. We're blessed to have an incredibly supportive community, including yourselves and the Board of Selectmen and all the departments. But we also also believe as a school district in giving back, and we really try, to do that very same thing. So I thank the staff for their steadfast dedication, really being challenged for all of us these past few weeks. I thank the parents for always stepping up and providing support, and we do all of it for our students. So I would be happy to answer any specific questions, but it really is a level services budget where we're not adding any new positions at all.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Brunel. I'm going to ask our members if they have any questions. Mr. Kennedy, ask you first. Do you have any questions?
Just similar questions I asked Mr. Marino relative to technology and the way you've had to push out classes and materials to the students across the district during this. Do you see any changes or requests going forward relative to how you deliver things in the future?
So as I understood the question, we're fortunate, and this has been with building projects at the middle school, but then also through the support of the town and through CIP funds. So we have currently a true one-to-one program of grades 6 through 12 where students have access 24/7 during the school year to their iPads. Grades 3 to 5, we have an effective one-to-one program. Children don't typically bring them home, but I will say to you that we have lent to families countless numbers of iPads. At the primary level, we have about a 1-to-2 ratio that students share them because there are other, books and such that they're using, and they're used at all levels too. So I think right now we are holding steady with that, and with the CIP funds and the leases that we have ongoing, I think we are in fine shape technologically.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brunel. So let's go to our friends at home. Ed Coleman, do you have any questions for Dr. Brunel?
No, I don't. I think the information was presented very well in the budget, and the key things I always focus in on are additions to staffing, and that was explained very well. So I think I'm good.
Thank you, Ed. Mallory, any questions?
No questions, but I would just like to thank you, Dr. Brunel, for that clear explanation of the change in budget relative to the 2 leaves of absences. That really clarifies some of the questions I had.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marshall, any questions?
I'll reiterate the thanks from the rest of the committee, but my one question is, do we anticipate any savings in this fiscal year from the schools having been closed?
So interestingly, we are still required to pay out-of-district tuition. The one potential savings is in our regular ed transportation line, potentially, and that is due to contracts being written that they need to provide services. We have been, as Ms. Casanova said, on weekly and sometimes daily and multiple times a week conference calls with the commissioner, both the Commissioner of Education and the Finance Department from DESE, and really encouraging districts to continue to pay all staff. I'm sure they want to keep people off of unemployment as much as possible, but there is a group of like districts with different vendors that are going to begin some negotiations, but I don't have any information on that at this time. We hope to realize some potential savings.
And I guess to follow up on that, the savings I was thinking about, which maybe are not a reality, are things like electricity, gas. I assume that we've done something to sort of mitigate some of the costs just associated with being open on a daily basis.
Sure. So thank you for that. So I believe we are likely to see some. It's been too soon for us to have any data on that, but we certainly do have our schools in what Mr. Fahey, I think, would call holiday mode to really try to reduce the usage of those utilities. But I don't have any data on that now. What I can tell you, just as we do throughout any given year, is we are tracking it on a monthly basis, and we will continue to really watch that closely.
Thank you.
certainly.
Thank you, Dr. Brunel. And also back to our member, Trevor Sansucci. Do you have any questions for Dr. Brunel?
No questions. And everybody took all the good compliments, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, question?
Not just so much a question relative to the budget, but certainly the most disappointing part for me anyhow of tonight is that we don't get to have Dr. Brunel before us tonight, which would have been her final presentation to the Finance Committee as she's fast approaching her retirement. Just wanted to thank her for all that she's done for the town of Auburn, the schools, your professional support of the Finance Committee, and the presenting very clearly what could be complicated budget numbers to us and explaining them. But thank you and congratulations on your upcoming retirement. I'm sure this is not the way you wanted to wrap up, but certainly is an interesting way to go.
Certainly so, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Kevin. Dr. Brunel, I actually do have a couple of questions. One is on school population, the other is on school choice numbers. Have those numbers remained consistent for the school year that we're in to the one that we had just completed?
Yes, so we have, in last fiscal year, we had 2,632 students, and in this current fiscal year, we had 2,636 students, so very much the same. I mean, a modest increase of 4, and that's probably our least modest increase that we've seen since about 2012.
Okay.
Our school choice numbers do remain the same at 82, and the school committee did vote at a recent meeting to maintain those numbers. They've not made any increases to those.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Brunel. So let's see. We have the town manager recommendation and the school department request total budget are virtually identical. So I'm looking at the school department request. Their budget request is $27,676,055. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend the school department
Number. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Do I hear from our audience a motion, a second? Okay, Ed seconded that. So we're going to have to do the roll call again. All in favor of the recommendation? I say yes. Ed Coleman?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin Kennedy?
Yes.
Mike Marshall?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much, Dr. Brunel. I appreciate you participating and holding on while we got things squared away. Thank you. And, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, your capital budget. Does anyone have any questions regarding the capital budget for the school department? I will ask a question. I see that this will be the final year of the payment to replace the turf field at the high school, correct?
Are we talking FY25 or FY20?
Oh, I was looking at FY 21.
Oh, and 21, let me see.
And maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. Hold on. High school. Oh, I beg your pardon. That's not the turf field. Oh, it is. It was coming from Stables?
Yeah, I believe it's $130,000.
Yep.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so members, do you have any questions for Dr. Brunel about the CIP budget? All right, hearing none, thank you very much, Dr. Brunel. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much, and I just want to express my thanks for your support over the years too. It's been great, and I hope we get to see each other.
Yes. You're always welcome to come to a finance committee meeting, all right?
Well, thank you very much for that offer. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. All right, so thank you. Next on our agenda is BayPath.
So, Madam Chair, I think we
Yes.
have it scheduled from 6 to 6:15.
Yes.
We do have some other budgets that we identified as
Aha.
fillers in between.
Great, so we're not, okay, great.
So we can do, I mean, I have before me, emergency management and pension benefits, if you'd like to do one of those.
Yep, let's talk about emergency management. And this was a revised number to what was in our books originally. Ed, what changed?
So we made an adjustment to the overtime line item because of the monthly testing of the police generators. We had a situation where we had a lapse in communication that was critical through dispatch. So in order to ensure that these generators are working properly, we do a test on them monthly, and that has been going on probably since early fall, and has required an adjustment to the current year's budget, so we wanted to properly reflect that in next year's budget as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kazanovich, who does the testing of the generators?
So our fleet maintenance department,
Okay.
our mechanics work on the generators and they test them periodically.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, this department request is $14,000 for the emergency management budget. The town manager recommendation is $15,500. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kazanovich about this budget? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second? Thanks, Ed, a second. Let's see, all in favor? Let me go through the roll call again. I say yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, that line, that budget of $15,500 is recommended. What did you suggest looking at next, Mr. Kazanovich?
We sent to the members an amendment for pension and benefits this
Okay.
morning.
Thank you, I have that here. And how did this change from what was originally given to us?
So we're recommending a reduction right now in group insurance from original estimate was $8,250,000 down to $8 million.
Okay.
And let me just explain what information we just became aware of. So we do have our renewal numbers, although we don't have our stop-loss insurance numbers. So our renewal numbers came in at a blended 8.9%. We budgeted 8%. So you're asking why the reduction? Well, we decided once again to put at risk a portion of our healthcare trust. We have a very rich balance. We have about $9 million. We did this a few years back. We put at risk about $300,000. And when I say at risk, we're basically counting on actual claims coming in less than what it's trending at, and that worked in our favor that year. If not, we erode the trust potentially by about $430,000 if the actual claims is trending higher. And it's a combination of things. We're actually going to consider going up on our stop-loss insurance from $100,000 to $125,000. That could be beneficial to us. But there are a lot of unknowns here. So one of the unknowns that we're seeing is a result of the high unemployment recently. People are jumping onto our health insurance plans.
Yeah.
So the numbers are going up. We do have open enrollment. We're hoping that the economy returns to a robust activity as we saw before the COVID-19 crisis, which will allow people to resume their health insurance plans once they go back to work. And we're uncertain of whatever COVID-19 health expenses may hit us as a result of this pandemic really ratcheting up in the next couple of weeks. Although we have stop loss that will minimize our exposure, but we're expecting our actual claims to go up. So we are concerned about that. So we do have some buffer right now in that $8 million, but with these uncertainties, we're not willing to scale it back any more than what we're recommending right now. Although I can tell you, we will take a second look at this when we revisit the budgets, whether it be this summer or potentially this fall when we have some more information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kazanovich. Any questions? Mr. Kennedy, do you have any questions about the pension and benefits?
No.
Okay. How about Ed? Do you have any questions for Mr. Kazanovich?
No, sir.
Mallory?
No questions.
Mr. Marshall?
Nope.
And Trevor, do you have any questions?
No question.
Thank you. So the only comment that I would make is I see Worcester County retirement has increased again. And I see that we do get a discount if we pay by July 1st.
Correct.
So is the budgeted item, is what's in the line item including, taking into account the discount?
Yes, it's offset
Okay.
by that reduction.
Okay.
Madam Chair, one other line item that I do want to draw some attention to that may be underappropriated, given the circumstances, is unemployment compensation.
Yeah.
So certainly there has been a definite uptick. Certainly there has been no release of employees to date. As we get a little deeper into this crisis, that may change. But certainly, even though none of our employees have been furloughed or laid off at this point, we do expect that to increase because there is an overlap. When you look at the number of quarters people are working at, we may have had people come in or have left our system that have quarters built up over the past year or so. So we're expecting an increase in that line item to hit us in the coming months.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I see the town manager recommended budget for the pension benefits line is $12,219,942. That's an increase of 6.7% to fiscal 2020. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. So let's do the roll call. I say yes to recommend it. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
I will abstain from this vote.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes.
Mike Marshall?
Yes.
And Trevor? Okay, so that would be 5 yes and 1 abstention. Yep, okay, thank you very much. So that one's all set. And did we want to talk about,
Madam Chair, can you look at the board? Is John?
Yes.
Did he check in yet?
perhaps, we have 2 unidentified, who has checked in within the last 10 minutes? Can you just,
My name's Dean Iacobucci. I'm the business manager at Bay Path Regional.
oh, thank you very much. Okay, did you get that?
John LaFlash from Bay Path.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. LaFesh, Mr. Iacobucci. Okay, so we'll get your names on the board. Thank you, Mike. So can we can look at the Bay Path right now, right?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. All right, so thank you very much. Okay, here we go. We have the Bay Path budget for fiscal 2021. Their request is $1,162,630, and that's an increase of 8.16% to fiscal 2020. So our members requested that someone from Bay Path come in and talk to us, so I'm going to go right to our members to see if you have any questions. Kevin, do you have any questions?
I do, sir.
Thank you.
I think over the years, we've been given an overview of how the Bay Path assessment is calculated, how many students from Auburn we have up at Bay Path. If you could just give us sort of a general overview on how the assessment's calculated and what kind of population we have for students from town that are currently attending Bay Path.
We sent over to Ed a PowerPoint presentation that covers a lot of that information, and I know that you're on a short time frame, so if it was okay with the chairperson, I'd just like to ask Mr. Yakabuchi to go over several of the slides that will cover both how the assessment is calculated at the minimum, and also talk a little bit about the number of seats for Auburn.
Do you want to look at that? Okay, that would be terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay. Dean?
Thank you, John. Can everybody hear me okay? I've got you on speakerphone here at home.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm coming in okay?
Yes.
Okay, then moving through the PowerPoint presentation that we had sent earlier, I'm going to skip several of the slides, but it'll kind of walk you through how we've developed our budget, what's in there, and how it's been calculated. So if you turn to page 2 of that document, you'll see where our funding is coming from. Now, I'm sure you're faced with the same challenges that we are. You know, all bets are off now in terms of what's going to be available funding next year. All we have to work with, as you do, is the governor's numbers that came out in his budget in January. So that's what we're still rolling with. You can see our proposed Chapter 70 funding is an increase of $569,652. The total amount is $11,655,265. Our Chapter 71 funding, which is regional school transportation aid, is $1,158,688, and that's a decrease of $16,357 over the current year. I'm going to move to slide 4 now, or on page 4. Our total budget for assessments is $23,837,609, and that's a 4.61% increase over this current year. One thing that you'll hear us say several times this evening is that our member town assessments are at the minimum. We are not requesting anything above what any of our member towns are required to provide for funding in fiscal year 21. Our budget includes a debt service assessment of $1,565,553. We aren't requesting funds above minimum contributions, and member assessments total $11,182,275. Moving to slide 5, or page number 5, it just kind of breaks it down. You see what our Chapter 70 revenue is. We do receive a school choice assessment, which is a direct hit to our Chapter 70 funding. Our assessment next year will be $208,619. I see our regional school transportation aid. We also receive a $30,750 betterment assessment from the town of Charlton for tying into the sewer, and we'll be paying that until fiscal year 23. And then we've also recommended to the school committee to use $50,000 from our excess and deficiency account to continue funding our OPEB liability. If at any point in time anybody has any questions, certainly feel free to stop me. I'm going to jump down to page 7, and as a brief overview of what's in our budget, we believe we have made appropriate provisions for supply and material accounts for all of our shops and our academic series. We have funds included for new textbooks for math, science, social studies, cabinet making, and veterinary science, which is a new program, as you may have heard, that will be starting next year. And I'm sure as we move on, Mr. LaFleche might elaborate a little bit on that. And we've also included funds for textbook replacements that are required because of lost or damaged textbooks. included funds for the purchase of some equipment for some of our shops. Specifically, we're going to be buying additional equipment for advanced manufacturing, electrical, metal fabrication, programming, web and development. Moving to page 8, we also have funds for equipment for cosmetology, building and property maintenance, drafting, and new student computers. We've included funds to add one full-time equivalent teacher for the veterinary science program. In fact, we were hoping to bring that person in this year to start the curriculum development, but everything kind of got put on hold. We also have included funds to provide wage increases for all of our union and non-union employees. And something new this year is we have a reserve for the Student Opportunity Act related expenses. Moving to page 9, we are expecting to bring in 325 freshmen. You can see that Auburn's share of that 325 students is 14.97%, or 48 students. Auburn is our largest town with a capital population of 2,765. That capital population is a number that comes from a report that's filed with the Commonwealth each March based on the number of school-age students that reside in the town of Auburn, regardless of where they're going to school, whether it's private school, public school, homeschool. It's your total number of school-age children that reside in the town of Auburn.
Let me stop you, Dean, for 1 minute. So if you look at that page 9, you'll see there are 18,475 students living in our 10 towns. 2,765 students live in Auburn. Therefore, roughly 14.97% of the students in our 10 towns live in Auburn, and you get 14.97% of the seats, which is 48 next year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John. Jumping down to page 11, you'll see the foundation enrollment for both the Auburn Public Schools and Bay Path, and you have an increase in that enrollment, and actually in both areas. Auburn Public Schools has an increase of 17 students, and Bay Path has an increase of 4 students. Moving to page 15, you can see how these assessments work out for all of our towns. The 3 pages that I just skipped, 12, 13, and 14, I'd be happy to go over them if you'd like, but it shows you how the state calculates each town's minimum contribution. And I know we're on a limited time period, so I just kind of gloss over that. But if you have any specific questions on that, I'll be happy to answer them. The state has calculated Auburn's minimum contribution to BayPath to be $897,202. Moving across that top line, we pick up Auburn's share of our transportation expense, which our total amount that we have to assess our 3 towns is $345,906. Auburn's share of that is $26,462. The capital population, which we just went over a minute ago, is what determines what share Auburn picks up of the debt assessment, which is $234,363, and the capital improvement assessment, which is that sewer betterment fee to the town of Charlton. Auburn's share of that is $4,603 for a total assessment of $1,162,630. So you can see there's nothing more in that other than what is required spending.
I do want to jump in for 1 minute.
Okay, John.
And talk just a little bit about the fact right now we have 90 students from Auburn in the school. And you can see that next year you can use up to 48 seats. Auburn is one of 2, sometimes 3 towns that don't use their full allotment of seats seats every year. But what that means is every student that ends up applying from Auburn to Bay Path gets accepted into Bay Path. We don't have any cutoffs on scores and so forth, even though there's an application process. So every student that has applied and wants to come to Bay Path over the last 10 years that I've been, or 8 years that I've been superintendent, has been accepted, and if they wish to attend, they get into Bay Path.
Thank you, John. That's a good point. Thank you. Do you want to continue, Dean?
The last slide I was going to touch upon is on page 16, and it compares each component of Auburn's assessment from the current year to the proposed year next year. And the big takeaway that I want to emphasize here is, although Auburn's total assessment has gone up 8%, you can see what's driving that, and that's the minimum contribution amount that's determined by the state, and that is a 9.78% increase, or $79,965. The transportation, debt service, and capital improvement assessment increases are a direct result of just having more students in the foundation enrollment and in living in or residing in the town of Auburn. But the big increase is in that minimum contribution number, which is determined by the Commonwealth. But that shows you each one of your components compared to the current year to the proposed year. And that was all I was planning on going over. I'm sure you might have some questions, or if there's other slides that you'd like me to explain, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Well, I have a question before I go to our members. I have a question regarding our current year fiscal, well, actually regarding the budget in front of us. What do you think is going to be the impact of the financial crisis on the fiscal 2021 budget?
I don't want...
Dean, if I might start, then you can throw in. Just so the committee knows, we are very concerned about that very question, and in fact, at the current time, we have a freeze on expenditures until we see a little further what's going to happen with the fiscal 20 budget, because quite frankly, with the complete shutdown we're in right now, every source of state taxation seems to me to be going down. So we're being very cautious now, although I have to tell you that we had a phone call with the state school finance people, and we have to be concerned about not missing that school spending by more than 5%, which we're right at the edge of 100% budgeted. So, in other words, we have to spend most of our budget so we don't get into a penalty situation, because apparently they're not considering any relief for that this year. For next year, we know that we may have to revisit this budget if the legislature has to cut the budget, and we're prepared to do so to whatever extent that they tell us that we have to do so. That might mean, for example, some equipment gets deferred, some books, things like that. But we're watching that situation carefully.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer. I had a question regarding OPEB liability. What is the liability for the district, and how much is set aside right now?
Our OPEB liability is approximately $12 million.
Okay.
And although I don't know what happened with our investments over the past few weeks, we were at about $480,000 in our OPEB trust fund.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's look at our... John?
I was just asking, currently we aren't charging our OPEB trust for anything. We're trying to build a reserve.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Mr. Kennedy, did you have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully, next year we can get the in-person one, because I think even just this discussion over the phone was helpful, at least for me. But can you just explain how many seats, the seats again, and how many seats for Auburn kids are gone unfilled, and with this seamless national trend that vocational schools are at the forefront of many initiatives, why are we seeing vacant seats from Auburn kids? Kids not being, I don't even know if you do recruiting out of the middle school levels to try and get students over to your schools, but can you just touch on that a little bit as to why we have so many vacant seats that we're...
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, let me say this, that the current number of applications is somewhere in the vicinity of about 46. So you're getting close to that 48 next year. But one answer as to why there are open seats from Auburn is because of the excellent caliber of the Auburn public schools. I can say with confidence that Auburn has one of the best school systems in our 10-town region, and you should be very proud of that, which of course results in us receiving fewer applications. So that's primarily the reason for it, although we have seen from year to year small increases, and like I say, this year we're already at 46. Now what happens also is students change their minds. So we might have, for example, we have 46 now, and they've all been notified that they're accepted, but for a number of reasons, from now through September, students decide to change their minds. Either, for example, a good friend has decided not to go, so they don't want to leave their friend behind. Some of them move. Other items come up, and they make that change. But we have seen more students. We went from 86 to 90, and I project that next year you will be sitting. Well, Dean and my replacement will be sitting with you and advising you that the count has gone over 100, because although I don't have the exact count of seniors, it's a rather small cohort of seniors, and I suspect they'll be replaced by a much larger cohort of freshmen. But the main reason that you're seeing seats open in Auburn, which is not the norm, is because of the outstanding school system that you have.
And if I could add to that, if you look at page 14 of the PowerPoint presentation, that's in the headline is School Attending Children Report. If you look at the student population in Auburn, and I provided 7 years of information there, look at Auburn. As of January 1st, 2013, you had 2,567 school-age children. That number increased to 2,765 as of January 1st, 2019. If you look at our other towns, with the exception of one, you see their school-age population is declining by significant numbers. And again, that goes back to the caliber of schools that Auburn Public Schools are providing, or the caliber of education, where school-age students are dropping just about everywhere. Auburn's seeing an increase.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's too bad Dr. Brunel hung up, because she could have heard all those nice compliments about Auburn schools. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's go to our audience members at home. Ed, do you have any questions?
No, I'd say the PowerPoint was extremely helpful. I mean, I was zeroing in on the average cost per Auburn student on the assessments, and that's all. I can see all that. So I think the PowerPoint's really helpful. That it really doesn't. I don't really have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mallory?
No questions tonight, thank you.
Mike Marshall?
No questions. Thanks, gentlemen.
And Trevor?
Yeah, I had a couple that I wanted to go through. I'm trying to peer through the PowerPoint, and I was hoping first if you guys could give a little more intel into how the Commonwealth is creating that minimum assessment, what they're using for that. I'm having a hard time from the presentation trying to see what underlying information the state is using to create that 897,000.
Okay, I'll take a stab at that, and John, certainly jump in. I'll redirect you to page 12. There are two numbers on here that the town develops through the Chapter 70 formula, and the first is the required local contribution. This is an amount that Auburn is required to fund education at a bare minimum. And at the top of the page, you can see it starts out by taking this year's required contribution, which for Auburn was $15,893,997. Auburn's municipal revenue growth factor this year, and that is primarily your increase in real estate, personal property tax, and excise tax. There are some other exclusions in there, but that's 4%. When you multiply this year's required contribution and you increase it by 4%, you get next year's required local contribution, and that's $16,529,757. Below that, you see the foundation budget. And again, that's a number that's determined by the Commonwealth. And for Auburn next year, that amount calculated is $29,436,850. Now, those two numbers, the required contribution and the foundation budget, are the minimum amounts that Auburn needs to provide for educational funding. If you move to page 13, you can start seeing how these numbers back out. Based on the foundation budget allocation, you can see that Auburn picks up, and I'm on page 13 at the top, and I'm talking specifically about fiscal year 21. Based on the foundation budget allocation, Auburn Public Schools gets 94.57% of the allocation requirement, and Bay Path gets the other 5.43%. So if you go to the required contribution, the Auburn Public Schools picks up $15,632,555, and the minimum to Bay Path is the $897,202. So that's where that number comes from.
The foundation budget, the foundation budget figure, okay? Each type of student carries with it a foundation budget number. So an elementary school student is less costly in the foundation budget than a middle school, than a high school, and then finally than a vocational high school student. So that's how the state comes up with that $29,000,004.
I guess what I'm having a hard time understanding is when I look at the minimum contribution per town, there seems to not be anything linear that I can look at where I'm comparing the number of students versus the contribution. It seems like different towns are paying more per student on a minimum basis
and
than
part of
others.
Part of that, Trevor, or the whole thing is, it's based on the ability to pay model that the state puts forward in the Chapter 70 formula. And that Chapter 70 formula takes account of two main items. One is property values in your town, and the other is income of your residents. It puts it through a formula and says, okay, the town of Auburn can pay X percentage of the foundation budget versus, let's say, Southbridge, which can pay only 50% of what Auburn pays. And so Southbridge's per capita is subsidized more under the Chapter 70 formula than Auburn's per capita. Dean, do you have those figures in this presentation, the percentages, or?
No, we don't.
Okay, we can get that to the committee to show you what percentage of the foundation budget Auburn is required to pay versus the other towns. But Auburn, by the virtue of its relative wealth to the other 9 towns, is probably either 1 or 2 in terms of how much you're paying per capita. Paxton may be close to you folks, or maybe a little higher. But it's because of your relative wealth versus the other towns.
Okay, because I've been trying to do some quick math here, and just when I get down to just doing, final assessment over, population in the school, it gets pretty staggering, and some of them, wasn't coming out like a true, it gets cheaper when you buy more. It seems like some towns that have smaller populations that are paying less, and then other ones with higher populations that are paying less. So, I was just curious how that broke out. Another question I had was, I'm looking at the allocations of all of the other ancillary lines there, the debt service and the transportation, and I'm just curious as to why the transportation assessment is done on a percentage of the student population, but all the other ones are done on an allocation based on the total students available by town. Because the way I'm looking at it is we're getting assessed 14.97% on the debt service, but only 7.6% on the transportation. Other things were. Does that make sense?
At the base level of that, Trevor, the district agreement speaks to this, but for the debt service, as an example, the debt service is used to provide the actual building that we're in. And Auburn does have the ability to fill up 14.97% of that building.
Okay.
In the past few years, you haven't used that capacity, but I think over time, you'll get there.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if how that was, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
Absolutely.
Okay, those are the only questions that I had at this time.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. And thank you, John and Dean, for answering those questions. Anything? All right, so thank you, gentlemen. So we have a recommended budget for Bay Path of $1,162,630, which is a 8.16% increase to fiscal 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? Thank you, Ed. All right, let's do the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed Coleman?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
I'm going to abstain on that one.
Okay, so 5 yes and 1 abstention. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Akabuchi, Mr. LaFleche. Thank you very much for participating in our meeting today. I'm glad you were able to attend because I know our members had those questions, so that's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Best wishes.
Thank you. All right. So, continuing on the Finance Committee, it is time for the DDIS to present the budget, and we have Darlene Coyle. Hello, Darlene. Good. So let's get that budget out.
Darlene, why don't you come up here? I'll switch with you so that way.
Good evening.
Hi, Darlene. Thank you. May I just make a note, too? I see someone who's participating remotely labeled Board of Health. Who would that be? Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Darlene. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much for having me this evening. So for the DDIS budget, we have the divisions that would be included in the budget. We have public health, planning, economic development, building, conservation, zoning board of appeals, in animal control.
I apologize for interrupting, but it's really difficult to hear Darlene on the conference bridge.
Darlene, why don't you come up here?
Yeah, why don't you come?
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
I'll switch.
These mics are more sensitive, I think, so. So Darlene's going to come up and sit up at the head table here, so we'll be able to hear her when she speaks. Thank you, Darlene. So I see we've got your budgets here. Is there anything you want to highlight for us, or?
Sure. So for the DDIS budget, there were not a lot of changes. We do have some things to note under the public health budget. We did increase the education line item. That was necessary because we, through last year's budget, we had difficulty getting everybody trained. We actually had to do a transfer within the department, which was helpful. But because we have 3 health staff, we just, that was a necessary thing to increase. And then also under the building department budget, we have just right now, we do have a staffing vacancy. So one of the positions for DDIS, the building clerk, is vacant right now. So there is, that's a vacant position. We're working short-staffed as of right now overall for admin. Most of the changes within the DDIS budget were adjustments for overall salary, and as you have supported in the past, there were adjustments made for several of the staff to bring them closer to comparable positions. Other than that, we have not had a lot of changes, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the individual divisions.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. I think to hasten things along, perhaps, rather than doing a roll call vote for each department, perhaps at the end, I can talk about what amount is requested, and then at the end, I'll read the numbers and we'll recommend them all together, do one roll call vote for all those departments. Okay, so the first department we're looking at is the Public Health Division, and the department request and the town manager recommendation are $264,016. That is a 8.2% increase. Actually, before we go on, Darlene, could I ask you a question? How has this health crisis impacted your department for this year?
So for the crisis, we know that we are going to we know we're going to need nursing help, and so we do have the town has a public health nurse that we have had for years. However, with the current situation and what the state is expecting the surge to come down the line within the next couple of weeks, we know that we are going to need help for nursing. We have been fortunate in the fact that the state has recognized that, and about within the past 2 weeks, they put some money aside for boards of health. We had applied for help in this area, and I'm happy to say we just received a check in the amount of $12,000 to help support those costs. So we don't know if that's, not really sure if that's going to cover the costs, but at least it's help from the state to be able to help in that area. We also know that personal protective equipment is something that everybody's talking about, and that is also an area that we expect to be able to to have quite high expenses on. So
Okay.
we are working collaboratively with all the town departments, and we have been doing that for several weeks, even before it came to this point. We had been meeting regularly internally with all departments and town management to try to forecast what's going to happen in kind of an uncertain time.
Okay, thank you, Darlene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at the Public Health Division of the DDIS budgets. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask right now? Okay, moving on, we have the next budget would be the Planning Division, and the town manager and department requests are the same, $85,111. That's an increase of 6.48% to fiscal 2020. Do any of our members have a question regarding this budget? Okay, continuing, we have the next budget is the Economic Development Division. The department request is $58,158. Does anyone have any questions regarding this budget?
This is Mike Marshall.
Hi, Mike.
So I noticed that this is, how's it going? I noticed this is a relatively new position, and I was just wondering if you could go into a little bit about what this position does.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Several years ago, town management had identified an area that we were spending a lot of time trying to make connections with the businesses through various ways. So town manager has a business roundtable. We have an economic development committee and several initiatives with businesses and businesses that people in the community that are connected with the town, but there was the need for kind of a more formal uniform contact. The town manager had identified having an economic development coordinator to be able to kind of be the point person to look for that connection to make with businesses, to identify, areas in town that we may have opportunities for businesses to come to town, land that may come up for sale, and just to kind of pull together the pieces, and also have a presence for the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. Since this position was created, we have been able to kind of coordinate that and have a presence where there is somebody from the town that can directly connect with people that are interested in coming to town or expanding or moving locations. They've worked on several different outreaches. I think when Amazon was looking for a place, we kind of threw our hat in the ring. That's just one example, but this position is really kind of for a contact for business. They also have Shannon Regan, who is in this position, goes to like all the business openings. So when there's a new business in town, it's kind of like a nice introduction to have somebody out there to say, okay, here we are. If you need something, let's connect. Or it's also helpful too, like if we have something that comes through from the state or local, we also have that connection to say, okay, we're noticing changes coming down the line for these types of laws. It's kind of a nice way to connect the piece. Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. So I think it's a very smart thing for the town to have done. I guess my question is, have we done any research on the ROI of that position, whether we've brought in businesses, whether we've been able to increase tax revenue for the town? I support this position. I think it's great. I'm just
any of that research?
I don't have an answer for you right now on that, but I can certainly get back to you on that. I'm sorry, Ed.
If I could just jump in.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Yeah.
So we have seen some positive results since this position was created. I think if you look at the commercial and industrial sector of our tax base, you're going to see that there's been an uptick. Certainly, I think this position has a lot to do with that. Not only that, we believe that just as important as attracting business is retaining businesses here in town as well. So we've seen that, and I think it's as a result of Shannon's efforts as a designated person that the businesses can directly contact. But in addition to that, I think it's the Board of Selectmen and Town Administration's long-term financial planning in minimizing the level of taxation not only to our residents but to our commercial and industrial tax base, which has paid dividends as well. So there is definitely a benefit. I need to underscore that not only is it economic development related, but it's a long-term financial planning that's been in place for a period of time as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cass.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I just ask one quick
Yes,
question?
Kevin.
Under that same position, was this position originally under the town manager's office budget, or has it always been under your staff?
Actually, these duties and responsibilities were assumed by our town manager herself. So as a result of this position, she was able to carve that out over a period of time. And now it solely resides with Shannon under Darlene's department.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think so.
Okay, so that was the Economic Development Division. The next budget is the Building and Code Enforcement Division. Town manager recommendation, $189,671. That's a 7.15% increase to fiscal 2020. Does anyone have any questions on this budget? Okay, moving forward, next is the Conservation Commission with a budget of $14,000. Oh, question? No, all right. Next is the Conservation Commission with a budget of $14,557, which is a 1.56% increase to fiscal 2020. Any questions on Conservation Committee? No? Okay. Our last budget in DDIS is the Animal Control. And the town manager recommendation is $68,582, which is a 7.24% increase to fiscal 2020. Does anyone have any questions about the animal control budget?
There's a revision to this, Madam Chair.
Oh, there is?
There was a line item in here for, Darlene, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have the corrected one.
Yep.
The total budget is $68,677. There was a $95 adjustment to, is it clothing and uniform?
Yeah, so I do think that was a typo, Ed.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
under clothing and uniform, it's supposed to be $100 and it's actually $5.
Okay.
So the total animal control budget is $68,677. The total departmental budget is $680,190.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as Mr. Any questions on the animal control budget? No? Okay, as Mr. Casanova just noted, the DDIS department request is $680,190, which is a 7.24% increase to fiscal 2020. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thanks, Kevin. Do I hear a second? Thanks, Ed. We'll do the roll call for all in favor. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike? And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So, thank you, Darlene.
Thank you very much. Did you want to do the zoning board?
Zoning Board of Appeals? Yep.
Thank you.
Zoning Board of Appeals, budget is $13,717. That's right after DDIS in the book, I believe. That's an increase of 1.54% to fiscal 2020. Any questions on the Board of ZBA or Board of Appeals budget? Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thanks, Kevin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. All right, we'll do roll call for all in favor. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That budget's recommended. Darlene, you don't have anything in the capital or the CIP budget?
I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. All
Madam
right.
Chair, one other department, I don't believe we have
yes.
any numbers here. Solid waste, Darlene, just a quick update.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So we will be looking at the solid waste budget in the near future. We know that we are going to be looking at increases because of what has happened in the recent past for recycling and the processing cost associated with that looks very different than it did in years past and in the previous contracts. So more information to come on that. One thing that I can say is that we did bring on a solid waste coordinator within the past year, and that person has been able to be out in the community to make connection on what's happening at the curb, and that's a big part of knowing what people are putting in waste and recycling. So that has given us an opportunity to identify things that are not acceptable to be thrown away, the use of blue bags, like the overflow blue bags, looking at what contamination is in the bin, contamination like plastic bags, food waste in the recycling. It has to do with the type of material, the recycling material being like a clean material. So that is very different than it was several years ago. So that's what we're moving towards, and we'll have more information to come.
All right, thank you. So the solid waste coordinator, is that paid for with a grant, that position?
So that is actually a position on the tax levy.
Okay.
It did start out, you are correct, it started out with a DEP grant. We had several years ago to be able to get an understanding if that is something that the town could see benefits from, and we did see a lot of benefits in that realm.
Thank you. Ed, what's the time frame on the contract for solid waste? Our contract expires on June 30th?
That is correct.
And are we soliciting bids?
Yes.
Currently, yes. Darlene, when may we expect numbers? Can you give us an estimate?
Yeah, hopefully in the next month.
So we do have a budget that will need to be amended at some point. Not knowing what those numbers are going to come in at, we're going to have to make an adjustment at a subsequent town meeting at some point. So I don't know if we want to put that on hold, what the Finance Committee's position is relative to the numbers we provided. Now we know they're going to change. But we fully expect to recoup through user fees 100% of the cost for solid waste as well as recycling.
Is this an enterprise fund? The solid, it is not.
No, it's not an enterprise fund, but we treat it as though it were an enterprise fund.
Yeah, okay. Why don't we vote this department request now, and then we can reopen it when we have numbers when they come in, because depending on when they come in. All right, so the department request.
Can I ask
yes,
just
sir.
a quick question? Do we have any idea by looking at other towns that have already negotiated, ballpark what type of percentage their bids have been coming back at for vendors? Are we industry-wide? Are we looking at 5%? Are we looking at 10%?
So I think that unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, in our current contract, we did not pay for recycling processing, and so within that time frame, the overall landscape has changed. So now people are charging for that. So we were fortunate in the fact that we haven't paid for it in the past several years, but going forward, the processing cost will fluctuate according to the market. So if materials are because the materials and the value for them can change over time, it's not a solid number. We are looking at recycling processing sometimes close to the amount that that solid waste that we pay for a ton. So there's looking at all different options to be able to take a look at that. So, is there a way that there can be like a cost share? If the market is good, we don't pay as much, or, if the market is not good, we may pay. So we're looking at that. Other towns have done something similar to that.
Okay, so previously, the tonnage that we put in the recycle bins was at no cost to us, but we could be seeing almost equivalent cost per ton for recycles as we do for solid waste, which in effect takes some of the incentive other than being a good citizen out of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, there is, we obviously want to reduce the amount of solid waste tonnage. So we try to do other things such as encouraging composting, taking food waste, if people can understand for, the materials that you put into trash, taking the things out that weigh. So any food materials that you may put in, maybe we've actually had more interest in people composting. So we sell compost bins. The recycling material, the good part about it is if people do it correctly, it's usually lighter than regular solid waste. So there's that to kind of pay attention to, and we do get numbers for like the weights. So in tonnage, and typically it's about 25% versus 75% trash. If that kind of gives you just like a
yes.
overview, does that answer it?
Okay. Hi, who just signed in?
Norman.
Oh, hi, Norman. Oh, good, thank you. Okay, we're almost set for you to begin. So we're looking at the solid waste budget, and the department request, town manager recommendation is, the department request is $1,250,477,000. And we understand we can recommend this, but when we actually have better numbers, we'll be able to come and reopen it and adjust that. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second? Thanks, Ed. All right, let's do the roll call. All in favor. Ann is a yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
We're all
Thank you
set.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your support.
Okay. So, our next budget to look at is the Youth Commission. And Norma Flesh, thank you, has joined us virtually. The department request is $180,000. The fiscal 2020 appropriation is $130,000, and the town manager recommendation is $133,575. So, Norm, can you give us any highlights or things that we need to know? I see our memo from you. Could you give us some highlights?
Sure. I made the recommendation based on the actual past history of the cost of services that were provided by Auburn Youth and Family Services. And I know that we had requested the full amount based on past conversations to try to address the shortfall that has been part of the budget, our budget, for a few years now. Realizing that with fiscal constraints that it probably would not go that high, but we just wanted to start at that point. The recommended budget that was actually given to us is, at least a step in the right direction. So we're glad that at least it's being recognized and addressed to an extent, and hopefully we can address the further deficits in the future. So.
All right, thank you very much, Norman. So do any of our members have questions? Kevin, do you have any questions?
No, just a comment. I know last year, the Auburn Youth came in and sort of supported, your recommendations and gave us some insight as to where the spending goes from the Youth Commission over to Auburn Youth and how they utilize the money. And certainly there is the need there, unfortunately, where we are right now, I don't think we can even, consider going any more than the town manager's recommendations. But certainly, I think you're on the right track to keep those conversations going with the town manager as the years go on. And I see you got your requests in nice and early this year, which is a good thing. In years to come, hopefully, we'll continue to chip away at that. But I think the amount recommended this year is on target.
Okay, thank you. Do any of our members participating virtually have any questions for Norman?
This is Mike Marshall. I'm wondering how we cover the deficit every year.
So how is the deficit?
What was the question?
Yeah, the question, Norm, is...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I took a look at the email that you had sent, and you said that the budget items for the last few years haven't covered the contracted services. So I'm wondering how we are covering that deficit in the past. Are we going back to town meeting with an update, or?
No, in the past, we have one avenue that we pursue through the budget, but Auburn Youth and Family Services does do, their own fundraising and other things, and they try to cover what that deficit is through those means. But then, it all depends on what they have to staff, what kind of services. They try not to cut back on any services due to whatever the cost is. And we've gone with what the budget recommendation has been every year. We ask for raises, sporadically. We haven't gone to do that, but we need to address those shortfalls a little bit more aggressively if we can to bring it up to help them provide all the services that they do through the contract to the town of Auburn.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Maybe Mr. Kesnovich can, for Mike, I know the first couple years I was up here, it was confusing as to what the Youth Commission did and how those monies went over to Auburn Youth, which is a private, non-profit, the relationship. And I think some of what Mr. LaFlash is talking about is Auburn Youth's shortcomings for contracts and not necessarily the funding that we provide.
So, as my understanding, as Norm said, they attempt to raise money through various functions that help supplement what at least the town contributes on an annual basis. I know in the past, talking with the treasurer and talking with some board members, that their retained earnings or their fund balance has absorbed a portion of those shortcomings if they're not able to raise it during the year. They are somewhat concerned that that basically their free cash or their surplus funds are eroding. And we've had discussions along the way that we're going to try to at least index our annual contribution by a level of CPI consistent with other departments that are getting it throughout the year. So, for instance, this year, the blended increase on the town and the school side was 2.75. So we indexed the Auburn Youth and Family Services as though they're a functioning department within general government by that same value. So we're showing a commitment to at least trying to stay ahead of the curve, stay up with inflation as best we can by indexing that. Above and beyond that, we are committed to looking at the level of contribution going into the fall town meeting to see if there's any wiggle room. I think given the circumstances we're facing now, that's going to be very difficult to do, but we will still take a look at it. So above and beyond the 2.75, I can't commit any funds for the remaining balance of the fiscal year. In fact, like any other department, we may have to absorb some decreases as a result of the difficult times we're facing right now.
Thank you, Ed. Okay. Does anyone else, Mike or Trevor, do you have any questions? Okay. So we're looking at a town manager recommendation for the Youth Commission for $133,575. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. So let's do the roll call. Ann says yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that is recommended. Thank you very much, Norman, for joining us virtually.
Well, thank you for listening to the request and approving it. We appreciate your help. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, next on our agenda is, I see, who has joined us? Who is the most?
Collins from the library.
Oh, thank you. So why don't we take a look at the library budget? Let's go to that in our book.
You know when you'd like to start.
Okay, yeah, let us just, it's under Department of Public Services, towards the back. Thank you. All right, Jean, thank you for joining us. I'm looking at your budget is right here, Library Division. Do you want to give us any highlights or make note of anything?
Sure, I'll just do a quick summary. The FY21 budget request is for $656,077. That represents a 2.14% increase over last year. Staffing accounts for $495,277. Out of that, we have 12 positions, 9 are full-time and 3 are part-time. The state requires that the town meet what's called the municipal appropriation requirement, which is also known as the MAR. For the town of Auburn, that's actually $637 and $637,095. Out of that, we have to spend 15% on circulating materials. And so for that amount, that would be slightly over $95,000. So you'll see that mostly in account number 5510, just because it's easier for me to keep most of them in that same account number. And so we're required to spend that much. If we don't meet the certification, and also we wouldn't receive state aid. And we, for the last several years, we received the maximum state aid because we've been in full compliance, and that's about $27,000 a year. So I guess I sort of an overview. If you can ask me some questions if you like, and I'll see if I can exactly anything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kennedy, do you have any questions?
Just generally, obviously prior to this crisis, how is the library doing in terms of people utilizing the facility?
For last year? Okay, I can give you some numbers on that. Our walk-in count remains about the same, about 71,000 people a year. That doesn't include phone calls and electronic communication. So we're quite busy. Last year we hosted. Let me just get my number here. Program attendance last year was 12,428, and that was up from 9,700 the previous year. So we are, drawing in a lot of our patrons with our programs. All libraries you can't just bring people in for books. You have to offer other services and resources, and we do very well with our programs. Out of those numbers, out of the 691 programs we did for children, 400 of those were designed and presented in-house, which means all of us wear a lot of hats. And so obviously we get a lot of good positive feedback for that. Another thing that's been very successful is our Museum Pass program. Several years ago, there were only 3 museum passes, and now we have 47. And last year, that amounted to a savings of $34,176 to our patrons. Those museum passes cost about $10,000 or $11,000 a year, depending on when the renewal dates are. So clearly, it's a good return on the investment.
No, that's great. I mean, you drive by and you see the parking lot full, at all hours that you're open, and that number of 71,000, that's an impressive number for folks coming to the facility. So good, congratulations, good job on that.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, Kevin. So let's anyone who's participating virtually, do you have any questions for our librarian? Okay. I have a question for Jean. There is a revolving account that the library uses, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you referring to, the state aid accounts and revolving accounts?
Oh, okay.
Are you referring to those?
I think so. And do the programs that you put on, are those all free to the people who attend them?
Yes, everything is free, including materials. There's never any entry fee or anything. Everything is free.
Okay, then you answered my question. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, let's see. We're looking at the library total. The department request is $656,077, and the town manager recommendation is $650,987, which represents a 1.34% increase to fiscal 2020. Do I hear a recommendation for that last number?
Motion to recommend the town manager's number.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. So let's go through the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor? Thank you very much. So that number is recommended. Thank you very much, Jean, for joining us.
Thank you very much for supporting our budget and for supporting the town in your role as finance committee members. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jean,
I'm sorry.
I don't know if she has any CIP scheduled.
I believe she might, not this year. No, she has nothing this year. It's for upcoming years only.
Correct.
Okay. So I think we're all set there. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Now that we're on Department of Public Services, can we do the senior center as well as community TV?
Perfect.
This is here.
All right. So we're looking at a senior center elder affairs budget. The department request and the town manager recommendation are $181,733, and that represents a 2.67 increase to fiscal year 2020. So I'll open it up for any questions. I have a question, Mr. Kazanovich. The senior center gets some grants, correct? They had a formula grant. Any other grants?
They may get some mini grants
Okay.
for transportation through St. Vincent's, the diocese, and I'm thinking of some historical grants.
Okay.
But their primary source of grant money comes from the Commonwealth of Mass, and they get about $36,000 a year.
Okay. And they use that, is that mostly for transportation?
Transportation for programs and activities up at the senior center.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I see the nutrition program on here. Is that Meals on Wheels through them, or is that a separate program, or what exactly is nutrition?
That's part of the Meals on Wheels program. That's the annual contribution from the town towards that program.
And have we seen any uptick in requests relative to that?
Yes, as a result of what we've been going through the last couple, we're trying to actually expand upon that program. I think the numbers are, we went from servicing about 70 individuals per day to about 90. But certainly willing to hopefully help out others that may be in need, especially during this difficult time.
And that's the type of program that, regardless of the request, we'll find resources to things around, right? That's not one that we...
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions about the Council on Aging Senior Center Elder Affairs budget? Do we have a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thanks, Kevin. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. So let's see. Ann, roll call. Ann says yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor. Thank you. Okay, so we're all set on that budget. Next, we can look at the community TV budget. Oh, and Chris is here. He can answer any questions we have about it. So, also in Department of Public Services, the community TV budget has a request for $246,432. That's a 3% increase to fiscal 2020. Chris, are there any items here you want to highlight for us?
No, not offhand. It's we're pretty much I thought it was level funding.
E&S is level funded. The only increase in this budget is for S&W.
So salaries and wages have an increase, and the non-salary items are level funded. Okay? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Largely just for the remote camera packages and upgrades to our remote camera packages. I had hoped to get some of them done this year, but with the spending freeze and the state of emergency, many of the companies that I use are declared non-essential. So I just can't field the upgrades. I don't know if I can get them, if we can get them done this year, great. If not, we'll have to carry them into next year.
Okay.
See what we can do.
I just want to remind the committee members that this is an enterprise fund.
Yep.
I believe the certified retained earnings for period ending June 30th of 19 was 340,000-ish.
Yeah.
In that ballpark. So certainly has a healthy retained earnings. And we're just meeting the contractual obligations in this FY 2021 budget.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
A question relative to the enterprise fund, and it's based on our contract with our cable provider. When is our cable, is there a renewal coming up? How far into our contract are we?
Got about 3 years left.
3 years left.
Yeah.
And are there any concerns, and I think I ask this every year, as you hear more and more people using that term, cut the cord, that we will not receive as much in these through our contracts going forward after that 3-year period?
We haven't seen a reduction of what's coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, what the market will dictate in 3 years from now, how that translates to future years' revenue is really unknown at this point in time. But yeah, I mean, there could be a change in the amount of revenue that we receive.
Our percentage is based on their basic package, which are bundling with internet and everything else, so we get paid.
Good. My second question for you is, you guys did a great job pulling this mishmash of wires and cell phones and laptops and cameras and things tonight to get this meeting. As we probably predict things will, at a minimum, need the capacity to be able to do more of this and probably in a more efficient manner. Will that be something you'll be working along with Mike Marino to sort of?
We're addressing. We're addressing in a different aspect. Right now, we're streaming this meeting through YouTube. We've been doing that for about a couple of years now. We can interface with GoToMeeting and Zoom and all of the others. One thing we're looking at is upgrading our cameras to something that's called NDI. With that, we can assign these cameras will be on a network. We can assign these cameras to any of our controllers. So we could carry a meeting from the studio at the high school. So that way I wouldn't have to be here, Rich wouldn't have to be here. So if we needed to isolate, we could do everything from the high school. That's one of the systems that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
All of our cameras going forward will have that technology.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Do any of our members at home have a question about this budget? All right, now hearing no questions, do we have a motion to recommend the $246,432 budget?
Motion to recommend.
Thanks, Kevin. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. So go through the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so it is recommended. Thank you. And I see there, just looking at your quick look at the CIP budget, you have 2 items for fiscal 2021. A high school broadcast package and servers and bulletin boards.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have for a total of $102,000? Do any of our members have questions about those? No, and they're both coming from the retained earnings, I believe, then, right? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
We're all set. Thank you.
And I wish you guys would turn your cameras
Is that a revised CIP? Because I only show the servers and bulletin boards.
Yes.
There was an amendment, and we
Yep.
distributed a new capital package to you. At your last
At the
meeting.
last
You don't want the wrong one. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you
All
very
set.
much.
Yep. So that budget's all set. So now let's look at the next one, which would be the veteran services. The department request, town manager request are $188,610. That's a 3.84% from fiscal 2020. I want to remind members that we get the town receives a 75% reimbursement from the state for all services that are provided for the relief and medical services. Any questions on the veteran service budget? Mr. Kennedy?
Just quickly, I know you refreshed us last year that there was a significant, we have a significant increase in 20 as compared to 17, 18, 19. Can you just remind me on what that involved?
So these are for qualifying veterans for medical and relief under Chapter 115. We definitely have seen an uptick in Auburn since since we took Lincoln Barber on board. I just don't know whether information is getting out that veterans qualify for these benefits through outreach or through word of mouth. So that appropriation that we estimated at 160 is based upon actual claims when we put the budget together. Some individuals fall off, some come on. It's a changing number all the time. So this is something that we have to keep an eye on. We may have to adjust this either up or down at the fall town meeting. But it actually changes from week to week.
Okay. And relative to the salary, we share the salaries with other communities?
So we just entered a new agreement with 3 other communities, Oxford, Charlton, and Southbridge. So we have an agreement that the state has bought into by a vote of each member community's Board of Selectmen. Our community actually requires a full-time VSO, a veteran service agent, but because of this regional commitment, we're allowed to share resources and try to minimize our admin costs as best we can by sharing our resources. So under this agreement, it does recognize a VSO here part-time, as well as draws on the admin component through a shared appropriation. We pay a share, $8,000 towards admin to be shared on our 4-member communities. So that is currently in place. This budget does recognize that new commitment. Going forward, I think the commitment's good for 3 years.
And how do we share, and see how we share salary? How does that full-time, do they gain benefits from one of the communities, or how does that?
Yeah, the shared resource does provide for fringe benefits as well. Certainly when you're looking at a community like Oxford, Auburn, Charlton, we're shallow, so at times we only have a VSO that may be available during certain hours during the week. On those hours that he can't support us, we're drawing on the resources through that shared pool. So our veterans are getting callbacks on a timely basis, and they don't have to go in the queue and wait for a period of time.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kazanovich. Any questions from our members at home? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to recommend the Veteran Services budget, $188,610.
Motion to recommend?
Thanks, Kevin.
It's 186,610.
88,610.
Oh, I'm sorry, $188,610.
100.
Did I not say that?
610 is what I have here.
No, that's not what I have.
What do you have?
What's the date on?
So there's a question on the number. Let's see if we can.
This is 213.
Okay.
All right. So we'll go with the that number that we just mentioned, $188,610. Mr. Kennedy made a recommendation, a motion. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. So let's go through the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we're all set there. And that is it for that department. So there's only 3 things left, I believe, in the budget. Well, and then the CIP. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I have debt and interest, reserve, CIP.
Debt and interest, right. So let's look at debt and interest now then. And I want to ask you about the proposed, and then we have Kevin here too. He can help us out with the public safety facility that's being talked about. What is the, how much would that cost, and how could we fit it in within our maturing debt?
So I think an early estimate, and Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong, is without land acquisition is about 39 million?
Yes.
For a joint public safety facility. And certainly if you're looking at the parcels under consideration, the value of that could be, all depending on, could be $5 or $6 million, I'm not sure. I know that's the value of the former Lowe's property. And certainly the mall, given the circumstances now, I couldn't put a value on that because of the changing economic conditions. There's been no consideration in the FY 2021 budget for any of those costs.
Yep.
I can tell you that the debt on the high school is retiring in 2024.
Okay.
Roughly, if you look at the high school debt alone, for FY 2021, it's 1.1 million, and it's a declining interest payment as we get further into the retirement of that debt. So we're looking at retiring roughly, just in principle, about 1.1. All depending on how debt is structured on a capital project that may be upwards of $45 million is to be determined, based upon A, interest rate, and B, based upon the duration of the potential note. And what impact that would have on the tax rate, we would have to examine. But there is nothing to provide for that project in the budget set before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. I think you answered my question. I was wondering when the high school debt and interest would end. I have another question. Do I see the middle school debt on here? I see the band pay down.
No, the middle school debt is built into, if you look at the general obligation of $16,425,000.
Yes.
A portion of that is middle school.
Yep.
The 3.256 and the 2.304 is, I believe, is middle school as well.
Okay.
They're a combination of a general obligation bond. I think we went out on 4 different occasions and borrowed a sum of money, our share, for the Auburn Middle School.
Okay, I get you. Okay, so do we have any questions about the maturing debt budget?
Just a comment,
Yes.
Madam Chair, just because you mentioned the public safety facility. Certainly, I had shared that working group and all the hard work that was done and proposals that were made were certainly made, prior to this economic downturn. And I think, certainly any discussion of that at the moment is sort of is off the table for the. I can't speak to town manager and Mr. Kazovich's feelings, but certainly I don't want that project to be adversely considered by the members of the town, the residents of the town, thinking that it's going to get pushed forward at this time. I don't see that being the case. Certainly getting all of our physical and economic health back in order I think is the focus right now prior to any big projects such as that. And I don't know, Mr. Kaznovich, if you can
It's a difficult time to consider a project of that magnitude. So certainly, I think we have to get back on track. We have to maintain a healthy position once again. How long that's going to take, I don't know, and whether or not our buildup of reserves over the years, and I'm glad we did build them up for situations such as this, and certainly no one ever saw this coming. But certainly we positioned ourselves well to absorb a hit that was unanticipated. How much that adversely affects our financial position is really unknown at this point in time. So I think you are correct, Mr. Kennedy, in saying it's probably time to apply the brakes and just to see what the fallout is going to be.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That makes sense. All right, do any of our members at home have any questions? All right, so hearing none, we're looking at a maturing debt budget, and with the town manager recommendation, $4,372,659, and that's a 7% decrease to fiscal year 2020. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thank you, Ed. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ed. So let's go through the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So that budget is recommended. Now we'll look at the next budget, which is the interest on the debt. Any questions? Okay, the town manager recommendation, $1,208,518, and that's that has a 2.75% decrease to fiscal 2020. Do I hear a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend?
Thanks, Kevin. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. So let's go through the roll call. Ann? Yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Trevor?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're all set. So now let's go way back to the front of our book and look at the reserve funds. Mr. Kazanovich, I have a question. Do we still have outstanding contracts, employee contracts?
I'm happy to report we came to a tentative agreement with the police superiors. There is a memorandum of agreement that is pending. It's prepared. It's being reviewed, hopefully signed by the end of this week. And that would complete the successful negotiations of all 10 units.
Okay, great. So it doesn't look like there's going to be a need to put any extra money in here like we've done in the past to cover increases, or?
So we did provide for a sum of money in here as a result of that continued negotiations with the superiors.
Oh, there is? Okay.
So we're going to have to either transfer it out of here effective July 1 or make a correction to the police department budget with a corresponding reduction here at a supplemental town meeting.
Okay, that makes sense. And there is a consideration in here for the bylaw employees?
Yes, we built in a 1% consideration for successful evaluation in the reserve account.
Okay, thank you. So the reserve fund has town manager recommendation of $300,000, which is less than last year's appropriation of $530,000. Do I hear a motion to recommend the $300,000?
Motion to recommend?
Thanks, Kevin. Do we have a second? Thanks, Ed. So let's do the roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Trevor? Trevor, do you recommend yes on the, I think he's gone. Okay, I don't see that he's participating anymore. He might have come off. All right, so that would leave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, nothing. Okay? This looks like Trevor is left. All right, so what else is there? Just the CIP,
Just the
correct?
CIP, Madam Chair.
Yep. All right, so I'm looking at the most recent CIP budget that was handed out to us last week. Okay, fiscal town manager recommendation for fiscal 2021, CIP is $2,625,596. And does anyone have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, just if you, Mr. Kavanaugh, if you can just explain, even being on finance for a few years, I'm still not, I understand capital, there are obviously bigger projects, bigger funded items, but at what point are there any things that have gone, that are proposed for capital this year that we can just say, no, we're going to push off and significantly reduce our capital this year, whether it be a new vehicle for a different department or something, other improvements, things that are not currently being over the course, projects that are already in place and that we're working towards paying off, but projects that were due to go online this year that we just say, we're going to push those off an entire fiscal year.
So when you vote a capital budget, there's several different funding sources here. And if you look at, and I'm going to go through that because it makes a difference on the funding source. So if we're funding it through tax levy, the money's automatically in place July 1. If it's a bond issue, we have to actually go out and borrow the money before that's recognized as a potential purchase under the program. The fact that it's appropriated doesn't mean we necessarily have to go out and purchase it. Just like we put a spending freeze in place, everything's frozen in place until we determine priorities and whether or not we can actually either rescind that or put it back into the general fund as an offset to some of the revenue we know we're going to lose. Like operating budgets, this will come under scrutiny once again to determine whether or not we have to hold off on some purchases or whether or not we have to downsize in order to offset, once again, some lost revenue. This is something that we're committed to looking at again. The amount that we're authorizing as a borrowing is $720,000. Once authorized, that doesn't mean we automatically have to go out and purchase it. There's a process. It has to go before the board. They have to determine its useful life. We have to reach out to the departments to see if they still want to go out and purchase it. If not, the authorization stands out there and they can purchase that at a later date. That authorization doesn't go away unless we take it to town meeting and rescind that authorization by voting a sum of money to rescind. So there are a number of components in here. Let me just recap that for everybody, what that 2.625 is made up of. It's made up of $1,228,216 of tax levy money. SOAR retained earnings makes up $200,000 of that. Packagug retained earnings, $45,000. Cable access retained earnings, $102,380. CIP trust, $30,000. Ambulance proceeds, $300,000, and bond proceeds, $720,000, for a total of $2,625,596.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question. And it's nice, Mr. Kazanovich, to see that every year the amount that needs to be borrowed for CIP decreases as we are able to use money within our tax levy, so we don't have to pay interest.
I'm glad you brought that up, because if you look at our borrowing needs, before we implemented the financial policies, we were borrowing about $1.7 to $2 million every year. That borrowing is now down to $720,000. We're applying 1/10 of our 2.5 every year towards our CIP plan. So if you follow that level of contribution on an annual basis, in 7 years, there'll be no need to borrow money to meet our capital needs. So that's why the plan was put into place. We see that it's working. Certainly, there are needs that have bubbled up that were not planned for, such as dispatch and federal mandates that required its own bandwidth, which really delayed us getting to the end zone. It delayed us by a couple of years, but certainly that's the overall game plan.
Okay, great, thank you. So, do I hear a motion to recommend the $2,625,596?
Motion to recommend.
Thank you, Kevin. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All right, so let's go through roll call. Ann is yes. Ed?
Yes.
Mallory?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mike? Yes, thank you. That was it. That was the last budget, so we're all done. Wow, okay, with time to spare. So we still need to get the warrant and review that, and are the selectmen finalizing that their next meeting?
So first of all, I want to thank you all for participating tonight remotely. I know everyone's schedule is busy, and under these difficult circumstances, I know it's hard to make that a commitment. So I want to thank each and every one of you. I think the board meeting is the 13th. I think there will be a discussion at the board meeting as to whether or not we will keep the annual town meeting scheduled for May 5th, or whether there'll be some discussion about postponing that for a period of time. That being said, that's going to determine at what point you will need to take a position on the warrant articles. It may be as early as, when would the warrant have to go out to meet the 1 week? The last week?
To make the 1 week?
So we would have to have a meeting before the end of April if in fact we keep a May 5th Auburn Town meeting date.
Yep.
I can't tell you how that's going to go. I know the governor has extended the stay in place, or the minimizing the gatherings of 10 through May 4th. Our town meeting would be the following day. The likelihood of that happening, to me, is slim to none. But certainly won't know until at least the Board of Selectmen take a position on where they want to go. So I guess we'll be in touch after the Board of Selectmen's meeting on the 13th to see what position or what vote comes out of the board. And then I think we can get in touch with each and every one of you to determine when we have to meet again to take a position on the warrant.
So possibly April 22nd or April 29th. Okay. If April 29th, if it gets moved.
I think the 29th would be too late because there's a 7-day period that we have to get.
If it gets moved. If it gets moved, we could still do the 29th, right?
If it gets moved, we could go sometime in May.
Okay, true. All right.
Early May. So my only concern is if it doesn't change and we're on for May 5th, we'd have to do the 22nd. Is that the Wednesday?
April 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ed. Does anyone have anything they want to add? No, I want to say thank you to everyone. Go ahead, sir. Yep.
Sorry, I had one additional question. This is Mike Marshall that I meant to ask during the reserve fund. I know we haven't had an executive session in a while, but do we have any indication of any progress in the litigation that we had discussed?
No, I have no additional information to share at this time. I think we may have some information by the end of this week or early next week, but if so, we can pass that along through an executive session at a later date.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. I really want to thank everyone who's participating tonight, especially those participating remotely. This is our first time doing this, and we tried to, I don't know if it went as smoothly as it could have, but I appreciate everyone's good nature and participation. And we were on the phone for a while, so thank you very much. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I hear a second? Thank you. So moved. We're all done.